Welcome to episode 6 of the Busted Buttons podcast, and today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the Nintendo 64, which was one of the kind of like formative systems of both me and Hick's childhood. And we'll also probably spend some time talking about the best beers for gaming, the games to play while you're drunk, and kind of get an idea for how we feel about game leaks coming out ahead of games. So a lot of good topics we'll cover. We'll probably get a couple other ones while we're at it. So like I said, the 64 though is one of our big topics today. So Hick, how about you start us off?
Ray, it's actually kind of funny. I was very excited when I was researching this today, but as I'm researching, I actually started to get mad, and I realized that I didn't actually play a lot of the N64, like the great games. I didn't play a lot of the great N64 games when they came out on the N64. Some of them I never played, and then some of them I played later in life. And, it's kind of funny because you mentioned it being part of our childhood. I actually disagree with that statement. I think, for me at least, because I am 2 years older than you, even though we're only one grade, well, that makes me look stupid. Anyways.
It's because of when our birthdays were. You didn't get held back. Because of when our birthdays were.
But for me, I think of the SNES being my childhood because that was, I don't remember exactly when it came out, but that was kind of like my 7 to 13 range. Whereas the N64, it came out when I was 13 years old. And that was my punk teenage, not punk like in music wise. I was a jackass, man.
You were an asshole.
Lie, I was a jackass teenager. And,
plus, you were getting into sports a lot about that time too.
Exactly. That was one point I was going to make. I was playing a lot of sports and so at that time, I was out with my friends, going to tournaments, blah, blah, blah. And, that kind of hurt me with the N64 because I wasn't really playing with other friends. When I did play, I was by myself because most of the time that I was spending with my friends was, out during these sports events. And then also playing sports at that time, I also played a lot of sports games.
Oh, yeah.
Like 1080 snowboarding. Played that wrestling game. It's wrestling sport. I think wrestling, it's not fake.
Hey,
it definitely is
It's
a
sports
sport.
Entertainment. Sports entertainment is what they call it. But you did mention... go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay,
sorry,
I'll go ahead.
You did mention I was a couple years younger than you. I was in a different situation from you, having two brothers that were pretty close in age to me. So when the Nintendo 64 came out, and one of its strongest selling points over the PlayStation at the time was it had the 4 controller ports. The PlayStation only had 2. The Nintendo 64 had 4 ports for controllers. So with there being 3 of us kids in the house at the same time, for us, we're like, oh yeah, this is money, multiplayer mayhem. So I'm kind of with you from the standpoint that I didn't play with a lot of friends, but having 2 brothers who were fairly close to me in age that also enjoyed playing video games. And then, like I said, the Nintendo 64 having those extra 2 controller ports really made it the console of choice over the PlayStation at that time. I get the PlayStation was insanely popular. It was very beloved. It's one of the best-selling consoles ever. But for me, just the added advantage of all 3 of us getting to play at the same time without having to buy like a controller splitter or something like that, it's what really pushed the 64 to the forefront for us. Along with it's just we were Nintendo.
Yeah, definitely.
We had the NES, we had the Super NES. The next logical step was a Nintendo 64. Definitely. So it just fit well with my family dynamic.
Red, it's a good thing that you cut me off because I honestly think I was going to talk forever.
And you can talk for the whole 45 minutes.
I was just going, but like I said, it just sucks because being involved in all those sports and everything, I didn't play. I thought I was too cool. I didn't think I was too cool, but that was just kind of like that weird 13 age where maybe I'm too old for Mario. I'm not going to play a Mario game or Conker's Bad Fur Day. I did play Banjo-Kazooie. That was a great game, and we'll talk about some of the games.
Yes,
but just missing those games, I got upset about today. Because I've always told you I didn't play Super Mario 64 when it came out. Now, I played it here and there when I would play a little bit at friends' houses. But overall, I didn't enjoy the experience of Mario 64 until much later in life. And going through it all today, I realized actually how much I missed. And it made me very upset because I feel like this should have been, it was a big part of my childhood. But I feel like I didn't experience the system the right way.
Well, and it's just, like I said, a lot of it's dynamic. I had the brothers, like I said, I didn't play with friends a whole lot.
Yeah.
Your family members aren't as close to you.
Yeah, we're all separated.
As mine were. So, but for me, man, that's what really made games like GoldenEye 64 and Mario Kart 64 really stand out for me. Was just, we love the competitiveness and just having a couple brothers there to play with, it made you always wanted to be, especially I was the baby. I'm the baby of the family, so I always wanted to beat my older brothers. So when we talk about games for the 64,
well, you cheated Mario Kart all the time, so you probably pulled it off in that.
Hey, I mean, I learned how to screen watch at a very young age. You remember that from our Halo days.
No wonder you're better than me at Halo. That explains everything right there.
But just having like and part of what kind of made the 64 unique, especially in terms of like a shooter like GoldenEye or even a racing game like Mario Kart, was just that joystick. That it was the first Nintendo console to have the joystick. The controller in general, I think we can both agree, was pretty fucked up looking. I mean,
it was pretty bad. I was actually going to talk to you about that. Like, I wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah, it's in hindsight, I like what they did with it, but now after playing like every generation since then has had the dual joysticks. Like trying to go back to one and then just like you had, what were they called? The C buttons, the yellow C buttons.
Those were terrible.
It was innovative for Nintendo, and it kind of felt cool. Like it felt like you were kind of holding a gun for like GoldenEye and things like that, because you had the trigger under there and with the joystick, but it was a weird controller in a lot of ways.
Well, it was weird because the joystick was on the middle, so you ended up playing like on the two right, well, the middle and the right little holder or whatever you want to call it, spear, parts of the spears, what I've heard. So like if it was all on the left, like that would have made more sense. Put the directional pad like in the middle. That always made more sense to me than the way they did it, because your hands were always really close together. And here's the thing. Like, did they do too much 3D? Like, I know that was like the adventure into 3D, but like you still see systems nowadays. Every Nintendo system has a lot of 2D gaming. Like, we see a Mario 2D game on almost every single system. Yep. A lot of these indie games. Now, indie games weren't as big back then. Actually, they probably weren't even really around at that time.
Not very much.
But, like, I always question myself, did they do too much 3D? Maybe if they would have wrapped in some 2D, like maybe like we've still got some of that old school feel, but at that time I do understand like that's where everybody was going. And I think when I say this, what I'm thinking of is Donkey Kong 64. And I never played it because I just wasn't that enticed by Donkey Kong 64 in 3D.
Well, and I think like when they saw the success of Mario 64, and then a little bit later, of course, Ocarina of Time, greatly, widely considered one of the best all-time, best games ever. They saw how those succeeded in that new 3D transition. I do feel like they tried to shoehorn that 3D into like all their other franchises, because you and I are both huge fans of like the Donkey Kong Country series, like the side-scrolling Donkey Kong Country games. They've got a great challenge. There's a lot of fun. They're just different enough from like a side-scrolling Mario game that they really stand on their own. So when Donkey Kong 64 came out, and I'm glad you brought this up, because it's like I felt like they got too far away from that Donkey Kong Country formula that worked well. And there's nothing wrong with trying something different. There's nothing wrong with trying to push the envelope a little bit, mix things up. Hey, look at Zelda 2.
That's what I was going to mention. Yep.
they've tried to experiment. But for me, it's like that era, and even through the GameCube, not to get too far off track, but even through the GameCube, they really kind of got away from the 2D side-scrollers. And I think it's when they went back to the Wii, which brought in a whole lot of like casual, I don't want to call them casual fans, but more mainstream attention. They're like, oh, all these people coming back to Nintendo now are used to the 2D side-scrolling games. So I think the 64 kind of really did drop the ball on that. I mean, I will give it credit, though. That transition to 3D with Ocarina of Time and Mario 64 first, but then Ocarina of Time, I mean, they nailed it. They knocked that out of the park.
And the music was so much more advanced in those games.
Oh, God.
Like, I know you're talking about, better technology, 64-bit versus 16 and 8, but the music in some of those games. I mean, there was some good music in the Super Nintendo games, but it was just like a whole nother level, which, should come along with 3D. But, I mean, I would say one of my greatest experiences with the games were the amazing soundtracks that came along with, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64. I'm sure there's other. I'm not gonna name all of them out there, but like, and then like all the color variances. I I thought that was cool. Like, they had a bunch of different color controllers, a bunch of different color N64s, and then you had some cartridges that were gold. Those looked awesome. So, there's just there's some things that, I didn't really care for. Okay, I actually like most of it. I don't have really too many arguments, but there was just some really cool things that kind of took it away from like the norm and the blah of past games. But let's talk about some games on the system. We've already talked about some of them, but just kind of go into like, what were your favorites? What did you played the most? Whatever.
Well, my earliest memory with the Nintendo 64 was at the Walmart in our little hometown.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They had a kiosk set up with a Nintendo 64 and Mario Kart 64. And I remembered any time that the parents would have to go to the grocery, go to Walmart for whatever, me and my brothers would go to that kiosk and be like, hey, just leave us here. Go do whatever you got to go get. We'll be good for the next half hour. Back in the days when you could just leave your kid in a Walmart and walk away.
Yeah, can't do that nowadays.
No, you cannot. So that was like my first memory of like the Nintendo 64 was just sitting there playing Mario Kart 64 in a Walmart. And when we bought the system, that was the very first game that we bought. And again, part of it was, the multiplayer component with the brothers, whether it was the races or the battle mode. Like I'd played the Super Nintendo version of Mario Kart and it was fun. It was great. But that jump from Super Mario Kart to Mario Kart 64, which is what they could do with the maps and so much more complex, so much more like verticality. You had ramps and hills and stuff that you didn't get in the original, and the tracks just all really looked unique. I mean, to this day, I can still hum some of the songs from the Mario Kart 64 soundtrack. I mean, you mentioned the music earlier. It's just, to me, the Mario Kart 64 was the first Super Nintendo experience, even before Super Mario 64.
Yeah, sadly, I've not played that game very much because that's not really a game that you can go back to after the fact. Like the graphics, there's a lot of graphics from N64 games, which kind of makes me step aside and kind of ask, why have we not seen a lot of remakes with these games?
Yeah.
Now, we've seen them with like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, but Mario 64 needs a remake. Banjo-Kazooie needs a remake.
Could you imagine if they put Mario 64 in the Mario Odyssey engine? Oh my God. Just do it.
We said that on a past episode.
Just do it.
Yep, and then you got Star Fox 64 I think got remade on.
There was a 3DS version.
Yeah, 3DS, but Mario Kart, they not really remade a lot. They kind of remake the tracks and put them in the newer games. So, you can kind of understand that, but there's just so many games that I think Donkey Kong 64, I honestly think would do great with a remake. And Conker's Bad Fur Day, I never played Conker's Bad Fur Day. I want to play it, but once again, that like the graphics nowadays, it's just very hard to play. Give me a remake, I might play it, but 1080 snowboarding, man. You're kind of talking about sports a little bit with Mario Kart. 1080 snowboarding, I believe that was the first game I got because I did not get Mario 64 with the system, which that makes me mad because I would have played it if I would have got it with the system, but I don't know. I thought that they were selling a lot of the systems with Mario 64, but maybe they weren't. All I know is that I did not get it, and for that reason, I did not fucking play it until I was later in life, and I was like, God dang, I missed a great experience. But like I said, going back to 1080 snowboarding, that's one of the best games I've ever played because it was just different and like just going down a hill, like going down the half pipes and doing all these crazy tricks. Like those are not things that you can do in 2D on the Super Nintendo or like, back in the day on the NES. So having this 3D, being able to do all these tricks and stuff, that game for me was just a ton of fun.
It really was. And like, it's such a simple concept. Like here's a hill with a bunch of obstacles, some half pipes, here's some controls to do tricks. And you can either race each other or go for high scores on tricks. Like that is such a simple concept, and that doesn't seem like a lot of content for a game. I had an absolute blast with 1080 snowboarding. I'm with you. It was one of my favorite sports. I know we hit on sports games a lot last week, but it was such a good sports game for the 64. And recently, or not recently, but within the last year, I tried checking out a game called Steep on the Xbox One rather, that was supposed to have like snowboarding, snow skiing, like the paragliding, all that stuff. And they tried to do way too much with it. Like it was just getting around the mountains. They made you travel around the mountains to get to like where you wanted to go. And they had all these like social events, which I know are kind of, you got seasons for these games now. I get it. That's the craze. But I was just like, call me old school, whichever one. but I just miss the simplicity. You pick a track and you go.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need a bunch of bells and whistles, maybe throw in some multiplayer, some online multiplayer, whatever. But it's like, add some downloadable tracks down the road. I don't need a whole lot, but Steep just went so far away from what I thought made 1080 snowboarding so amazing. And that's just like, with just your 64 controller, you could do so many different combos. And it was straightforward. It's like you pick a track and you go. And you played it often enough and you could really learn the in and outs of those courses. And it gave you the chance to rack up either really high scores or like get amazing speeds and times going down the mountain. So I'm with you. I thought 1080 snowboarding was amazing. Steep sucked. I don't recommend it. I'm glad I didn't pay full price.
Sometimes you just have to make a game simple. Like, you don't have to do put all the bells and whistles in there. Just make it very simple. Let me get to where I'm going. Let me do what I want to do, and that's all I need. Now, there was also I don't remember if I played this game, but the N64 has some wrestling games that were absolutely amazing. Now, I know one that people rank pretty high is the WWF No Mercy. I think I might have I think I had the one versus NWO or something.
Oh, yes.
I don't remember which one I had, but I remember that game was freaking amazing. It allowed you to do wrestling stuff that you obviously couldn't do with the older systems. And just had an absolute blast. And that's kind of what got me into wrestling at that time, which I'm thinking about making a return. We'll see. I'm thinking about, because I need some trashy reality that's more a little bit my wife watches the Kardashians, just all this trashy reality. All this trashy reality. And I need something like that, but I don't need the Kardashians. I need wrestling. So that might not get me back to it because we're talking about something in 96. But I'm thinking about getting back into wrestling. But did you play either one of those games or another wrestling game that you had a lot of fun with?
Oh my God. I played, it was THQ was the company back then that was pumping out the wrestling games.
That's the one I played, yeah.
I played WCW NWO World Tour was one of the first ones. Then there was WCW NWO Revenge. And then they switched their license over to WWF at the time, WWE now, of course. But that's when they had WWF WrestleMania and then WWF No Mercy. And I played the shit out of all four of them. And again, part of it again is, you got the brothers, it's a good way to get the wrestling aggression out of your system without chucking each other into the brick fireplace in the living room, which happened to two of the three of us. Couple trips to the hospital when you got three boys running around the house.
Hey, that's what's supposed to happen.
Exactly. But no, all of those THQ wrestling games I thought were so amazing at the time. And they were, again, we kind of talk about the simplicity. The controls were very easy, but they allowed for such a variety of moves for every single wrestler.
Yeah.
And all of them had 40 plus, if not more, wrestlers in them. And being a fan at the time, I was just I was so into it. You're talking the Attitude Era of wrestling, all that stuff. It was just, I had so much fun with those wrestling games. I remember, I think it was WCW NWO Revenge that came out and they're 40-man battle royal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, fuck, we're doing this. And of course, you can only have 4 people in the ring at a time back then because, the technical limitations. But just having that where it's constantly people coming in and coming in and coming in, it just, I loved those wrestling games. So I'm absolutely with you. It's just being a wrestling fan and then just having an outlet for some of that wrestling frustration when you've got a couple of brothers. We played the shit out of all 4 of those. And I know those series are still going on in the form of, if you got SmackDown, you had SmackDown versus Raw for a long time. So, and I think it's just WWE 2K, I think is the series now. Yep. But it's just, it all started back then with those THQ games and they were awesome.
And like you said, they had to make them simple because there's so many wrestlers. There's so many moves. That can be a very, or you can make a very complicated game. And the fact that they made it so simple and so easy to do moves is what made those games so great. Now, here's the thing, man. Everybody knows that or most people know that we do 2 guys playing Zelda. And we try, even though we did an episode with all Zelda stuff, we try to stay away from it the most because we try to put Zelda stuff on our other brand. But we cannot sit here and talk about the N64 without talking about Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So our hands are behind our back. We had no choice. Trust me, we have to talk about it. So I'll go ahead and start off. Ocarina of Time, my favorite Zelda game ever, still has not been surpassed. And you talk about Mario was groundbreaking. To me, I don't know which one's more groundbreaking. I want to say The Legend of Zelda because Mario did a lot of great things, but the game at its core is still very simple. And like Zelda introduces all these puzzles. You know, you're going through all these dungeons. I feel like there was more music in that game. It definitely had more of a story, which every Zelda game has more of a story than Mario. Hell, I can make a freaking Mario story like in 10 minutes.
Hey, Bowser kidnapped the princess. Go rescue her. Boom, there's your story.
But I mean, we're both bigger fans of Ocarina of Time than Majora's Mask, and we'll talk a little bit about Majora's Mask. But just Ocarina of Time, I mean, that was groundbreaking. It obviously changed the Zelda series forever. And just being able to like play, like adventure a game, like go around Hyrule in a 3D world. And I remember like in Kokiri Forest, like you kind of had that little area. I was like, you know what, this area's not huge, but it's kind of big. And then like you get past that and you get out to Hyrule Field and you're just like, holy shit, I get to explore all this land. I mean, at that time, it was just mind-blowing.
Well, because we weren't really used to something like an open world at that time. I mean, it's just, and in hindsight, it's not a true open world game. I'd call it more of like a hub game like we talked about an episode ago. But it felt open world because you walk out into that field and you're like, oh, I can go north to Hyrule Castle. I can go south to Lake Hylia. I can go west to the desert. I can go east to Kakariko Village and Death Mountain. Now, granted, they did a great job of gating it off to where you could not go to all those places right off the bat. But as soon as you walk out and you see that map, like if you go to the pause screen and go to the map, you see like, oh, there's this whole huge field and there's all this stuff that's still hidden. You realize how big of a world it was at the time. And just that experience of walking out into Hyrule Field for the first time is still, it's one of those gaming moments that I don't think you really forget. Because, you know, like you said, that whole intro area, even the first dungeon is all just there in the woods. I mean, and then as soon as you step out, it was just, it opened up and you're like, I did not know what I was getting myself into with this. But one of the biggest mechanics I thought that, I'm not sure if it like totally introduced it to gaming, but the Z target, the lock-on ability for 3D games.
I think it did introduce it to gaming.
At least to like to Nintendo for sure, but like because Mario you didn't have it because Mario's not combat based. You know, you jump on enemies, but that's about it. But introducing the Z target with 3D sword combat was just such a revolutionary concept at the time. And now, I mean, I can't think of a third person action game like that doesn't have lock on now. So that Z target ability I thought was an absolute game changer. And of course you look at it now and you're like, oh yeah, you just lock on an enemy, whatever. You face them no matter which way you go. It seems so simple, but again, it's one of those things, until someone does it, you don't even think about like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I'm not sure if they were the first ones to do it, but they were the first ones to do it as well as they did, because it's still, if you go back and play today, it's almost flawless. And that's saying a lot for a game that was released over 20 years ago. And then just, man, like, okay, I kind of talked the story. The story, I think, is one of the best in the Zelda series. And just some of those cut scenes and stuff. And then just go around to some of these freaking dungeons, man. I mean, the Forest Temple. Like, I'm not huge on the Fire Temple, but, okay, the first 3 dungeons are kind of, they're all right. They kind of introduce you to the game. I think those could be a lot better. But, man, when you become an adult, you time travel, which was also cool. But just going through those adult dungeons, man, and seeing, like, the chaos that Ganondorf brought to the market, and just like I said, forest, fire, water, shadow, spirit. I mean, those places were freaking amazing, and the forest and the spirit are 2 that still stand out for us. Like all the Zelda games that we've played, we still rank those 2 temples very highly. Just they're experiences that have not really been topped after all these Zelda games, depending on what your opinion is. Like, it's amazing that they could create something that good in 1998, I believe was when it was released.
I think it was 98, yeah.
Like, just to do that, and like some of the music that came along with the Forest Temple, the Water Temple theme is amazing. And you know, me and you, the Spirit Temple theme, actually I like the Forest better, but the Spirit Temple theme is way up there. And then
they fit the dungeons perfectly.
Yeah, and then one of our favorite areas, like that desert before the Spirit Temple, there was just something, I don't know, like getting there at the end of the game, you really didn't go that way very often, like throughout the game. And then so you get to the end of the game, and it's like this whole new area, and it was just amazing.
It really was. And just everything about Ocarina of Time showed, like it took that, you know, Mario 64, introduced that 3D exploration, and then Ocarina of Time, I feel like streamlined it near to perfection. And then the sequel, Majora's Mask, I will honestly say I only played it once on the Nintendo 64, and I did not enjoy it that much at the time. It took me going back a little older, a little wiser, a little more experienced, and replaying it on the 3DS that really, it made me appreciate what it tried to do with like the side quests and the character, like the non-player characters.
Yeah.
It made me appreciate it so much more. Like, it obviously took Zelda in a slightly different direction, slightly darker direction. But for me at the time, just like the time mechanic and a few other factors kind of just, to me, it didn't stick with me at the time. But going back and looking at it now, I truly didn't appreciate it for what it was trying to do in terms of tone, your connection to the world where everyone's on a schedule and the time cycle. But did you play it back on the 64, and kind of what were your impressions back then?
They were the same. They were the exact same as yours. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I hated 3D mechanic. I hated saving and restarting. Anytime you all have heard us. Anytime that we had to go back and like re-get all of our items, we absolutely hate it. So no, I was not a big fan. I still did enjoy the game, but because of that 3-day system, and I think I did use the slow down inverted song of time, I think it was.
Yep.
Like I still did slow down the time, but I still felt rushed because I was like, oh, if I don't get to the dungeon and beat the dungeon, I'm going to do all this crap again. So I didn't freely explore it as much as I wanted to. And then also talking about exploring, Terminal Field was just way too small, in my opinion. It really, the game... Okay, I know I'm sitting here bitching about the 3-day mechanic and how like I didn't have time to do a lot, and I'm also sitting here saying, could you give me more to do when I don't actually have the time to do it all? But
right.
Like when you played Ocarina of Time and then you go to Majora's Mask, the land area is just so much smaller, and so no, I did enjoy it at that time. But here's when I did enjoy it, and this is one thing I've kind of talked to people about. We used to record a lot of Zelda gameplay.
Yep.
And like, you know, when we did it, we would do walkthroughs, like, you know, so because we wanted to get every item, record everything, so we would know what we were doing. And I've actually found that some games, when I'm doing a walkthrough, I actually enjoy the game more because like I get to explore everywhere, I get to do everything that I might not done the first time around, and like I just like I'm experiencing the full game. And so when I went back the second time and recorded it, it was the N64 version, but I believe it is on the Wii that I played it on. But yeah, the second time I played, I was like, oh shit, this is a really good game. This is a really good game. And the 3DS remake kind of capitalized and like improved some things and made the experience even better.
Now, I will say, before we finish on the Nintendo 64 games, I got to talk about GoldenEye for just a minute.
Yep.
GoldenEye 007, for people who did not have like gaming computers or computers at the time, was one of the first-person shooters that a lot of people got to experience. And just having that 4-player split-screen multiplayer and just having like that as the introduction to first-person shooters. I mean, the campaign was awesome with all the different objectives you had, but then you had 10, 12 maps that you had for the multiplayer. It was just, I spent countless hours playing GoldenEye with my brothers. It was just, that is another one of those gaming memories that I've kept with me my entire life. I know computer gamers had like Unreal Tournament and Quake a little bit before we had GoldenEye, but as a console gamer at the time, GoldenEye will always be like that, no pun intended, but gold standard for a first-person shooter. So I couldn't move on from the Nintendo 64 games without talking about GoldenEye.
Yeah, Sally, I never played it, so I'm just going to agree with whatever you said.
Switching gears just a little bit, I think we've been wanting to talk about this since we started this. People who know us from our Zelda channel know we love drinking beer.
Yes, sir.
And we do not make any illusion about that. We love drinking beer and either playing video games, talking about beer. Any way you can put those two things together, we are huge fans. So let's just start. When it comes to gaming, what do you like to drink?
I usually just drink Coors Light because I'm getting older, and like, well, getting older, forget that. It's because I have kids, man. Like I can't drink a high alcohol content because my issue, and I've told you this and others, is I'm a quantity guy. So if I'm going to have like, 4 beers, then I'm going to have 4 beers. It's usually more than that, but like if I'm going to have that many, it doesn't matter what the alcohol volume is. I'm going to have that many. So like, I kind of watch it there when I'm doing craft beer, but most of the time I do just drink Coors Light because I have like responsibilities and crap like that now. Yeah, I love my kids, but the responsibilities that come with them kind of suck. But man, there's nothing like having a good craft beer. And what I actually prefer is to have a growler. To me, like if you go and get a growler of craft beer in game, there's nothing better than that.
Oh, I absolutely love that too. And it helps that like where I live, I have a number of breweries really close to my apartment.
Yep.
So just being able to go and fill up a growler pretty much, or two or three, let's be honest.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to make the most of your visit there. I mean, you don't want to keep on walking back in a growler. And one's probably, it might not be enough. You might need to have at least two.
Well, especially if you're getting something a little lighter, one can go down in no time.
Yes, exactly.
I'm with you. You and I have always been on the same page when it comes to our domestic light beer, though. I'm a Coors Light guy as well. And it's just the only downside of it is when you're playing a game and you're like, anytime you get that like 5-second pause in the game to grab the beer and chug, those Coors Lights can go down in a hurry.
Yes, they can.
And next thing you know, you're drunk off Coors and you got 12 empty bottles next to you. And you're like, what the hell just happened?
I mean, talking about beers and gaming, I mean, if I do get craft beer, I'm kind of the Pilsner, blonde, lager kind of guy. I hate IPAs. Anything that has a high IBU, well, we're really getting into beer now. We're not talking about gaming. We're talking about beer. But
it's kind of related.
When you get those high IBUs, I'm just not a fan. And then kind of same thing with the darker ones, the stouts and the porters. Just never been a huge fan of. But if you ask me, a great lager, a Pilsner, a blonde, that goes perfectly with gaming. And you know what? This is the one thing that used to suck about when we used to record is like you had to drink your beer so quickly because you had to get back to playing the game. You couldn't hit pause and everything. So I don't really miss those days because now I can play, I can drink, and I can enjoy it.
It did really make it a challenge because like you'd have to wait till like either a cutscene or you're talking to a character and you can just hit A or whatever to advance the conversation. And while that's going on, you're frantically pounding your beer. Because like, I don't know when I'm going to have another breathing moment. It's because in our gameplay recordings, if you ever go back and watch them over on our Two Guys Playing Zelda channel, you'll notice that we don't like the downtime. We try not to like pause and go to the screen. And so it does make it tough to sit there and drink beer. And it's the same anytime playing multiplayer games. Back in our Halo 3 days, when we first got out of college, oh man, we would drink some beer and play Halo, and you had to wait till either you were somewhere safe, which isn't very often in a Halo game, or you were dead, which was a lot more often.
Well, I could drink a lot if you go by that standard.
Hey, me too. We were not pros, let's be honest, but it was a lot of fun just to have that beer sitting there and like you die, and what do? You grab your beer, you take a few swigs, you pick yourself back up, and you go back into battle. So like that is one good thing, I guess, about like multiplayer and drinking is, let's be honest. Again, we're not pros. We are going to die a few times. And that gives us time to drink our beer. But you are absolutely right with recording gameplay, recording walkthroughs, even Let's Plays. It was very difficult to like actually really enjoy it and take the time to, drink in game because we're adults. Like you said, we got responsibilities. You've got a few more than I do.
Yeah, I got obviously 3 more than you do.
Yeah, with the kids running
That's
around.
Enough.
And the wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, so we like to drink and play games. So it makes it so much more enjoyable when we're not trying to do a perfect 100% walkthrough, no mistakes, all that stuff. But I'm with you, a good light beer. Like you said, Pilsner, lager, a blonde, like those are my go-tos as well. I'm not a big IPA guy either. Dark beers I really got to be in the mood for. Every now and then I'll do one, but it's normally just one. Let's be honest.
So maybe I guess if we're talking about like the best beers, obviously that depends on what kind of beer you like. So I would say, okay, if you're if you're going to game and drink, just drink whatever beer you like, and that's going to be the best beer for you and gaming. But it really just gets down to the simplest of concepts. We love gaming. We love drinking. You put them together. You're going to have a good time. It's beautiful and it's glorious. And it makes gaming a lot more fun up to a certain point. Now, I'm not going to lie.
Up to a point.
There's a certain point of drunk. Now, I don't really get there nowadays because, once again, responsibilities. If you have 3 small kids and you have a hangover, you are miserable, man. Like, it sucks. But
not only that, but like if you get so drunk that you start getting angry at the game, whether you keep failing or you keep losing, whatever it is, that's when it gets bad too.
I never get that way when I'm drunk. I'm just like, whatever.
Never.
But for me, like the one thing, here's like, like
You're
I get
so
to
full of shit. Just so you know.
like what am I full of shit on again? I forgot.
Oh, you never get angry while playing games drunk. Never.
Well, maybe that. Okay, I don't know. Maybe when I'm here by myself and nobody's bothering me and I'm not competing. Okay, I don't get mad then. Now, if I'm doing some competition or something like that, then yeah, I might get a little bit upset. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. I have never been upset in my life. I don't know why you're coming at me so much right now. But
hey, we all get a little drunken game rage.
that was my upset. That was my upset right there. But anyways, I forgot what the hell I was even talking about. To be honest with you,
beer and games. Just keep rolling with it.
But like I said, I was kind of talking about like how it's just a simple concept, and
it is
like you just like you drink what you love. But there, I was talking about that point, and there is that point where if I get too drunk, which I said doesn't really happen nowadays, but I don't game anymore. Because like I want to remember the games, I want to remember the story, I want to remember what I'm doing, and if you get to that certain point, you're playing a game, but you're not playing a game at all because you're most likely not going to remember it, or it's going to be blurry like the next day. So I think there's a certain point where you just got to stop playing video games.
No, I'm with you there, and it kind of goes the same way with watching movies or TV shows while you're drinking. It's like if you let's say you're home from the bar, you're drunk, and you're like, oh, I've been wanting to watch this movie forever. Next thing you know, you made it through the title screen and you slept through the rest of the movie because you quote unquote fell asleep on the couch.
Yep.
But so it is the same way because you don't want to be so drunk that you're like, you're not enjoying it and you're not experiencing it fully, especially games that have a good like emotional concept to them. A lot of games now have really good stories to them. I mean, Zelda games, of course, we touched on, are a perfect example of that. And it's like, you don't want to be so drunk that you're not enjoying it. So, I mean, that kind of goes with competitive games too, where you get so drunk that you suck, and then you just get mad, you chuck a controller through your 65-inch TV, and then all of a sudden, your night of drinking got a lot more expensive.
Did you do that before?
No, thank
Oh,
God.
the way you were talking, I thought you did that. I was like, wait, you never told me this story. But I think when you get
thankfully that has not happened.
When you get to that point, the game drunk point, like, I just made that up. It's not really that clever, so I don't even know why I was even happy about it.
We'll roll with it, though.
But, like, I think when you get to that point, like, you have to play games that you've played before. Like, kind of go back, reminisce a little bit, or play a game that you really don't have to remember, like Forza, for example. Now, as you can imagine, I absolutely suck at Forza when I'm drinking. But, like, that's a game where you don't really have to remember much. Like, I mean, you're just racing. And so, like, that game's pretty simple, but, either
it's better than drinking and driving in real life.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. But, like, you play a simple game or play a game that you've already played before, like, when you hit that point, or maybe you're just better than us, and maybe you can hit that point, play a game, remember it all, and maybe you're just sitting there listening to this thinking, man, you two guys talk about how much you drink, you guys sound like you suck to me.
And sometimes there are some games that we absolutely suck at, but it's funny you mentioned Forza because back in college, one of my favorite games to drink and play was Mario Kart Double Dash.
Well, that's different though than Forza, like when you're drinking.
Well, yeah. But it's the same general concept of racing. I mean, it's so much fun though. Like especially Mario Kart, you only have so many tracks. You learn them very well. Me and my roommates back then played all the time, and we would just get shit canned and play Mario Kart Double Dash. And on the game, it was literally one of like the 4 GameCube games I owned, and I bought that console pretty much for Mario Kart just to play it with the roommates. But anyway, like that was just. When it comes to drunk games, like Mario Kart will stand out just from those college days playing with the roommates. And I know we touched on this a little bit last week with our sports games. Drinking Tiger Woods was another one because you can make almost any sports game into a drinking game. And that's what we did with Tiger Woods. So those were a couple of my all-time favorite go-tos when it comes to drinking and gaming was just Mario Kart, Tiger Woods. And I think a big part of it is just the social aspect. Like you're playing...
definitely.
With your friends, you're drinking together, you're pre-gaming or just skipping class for an afternoon. Not that we ever did that at all.
I never did. You might have. I didn't do that.
I drank through a couple
No, I can tell you what you did. You would stay out working all night at the bowling alley, come home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, study for 30 fucking minutes for the test that I was studying for the whole past day, come in, you're tired as shit, you've been out, you probably were drinking that night, study for 30 minutes. I've studied. I don't even know how many hours I've studied. And then you come in and you do better on the fucking test than I do. That's the kind of shit that you do.
I was a good test taker. What can I say?
I did good on the test. You just did better.
But so, like I said, I love the kind of the social games, the Tiger, the Mario Kart. Guitar Hero was another one back in the day that we would just, obviously you can't really drink while you're playing your song, but in between songs or you're taking turns. You drink while the other person's playing. We got drunk a lot together with a couple of our buddies here in town and played a lot of Guitar Hero. So what are some of your favorites, though? Oh, you mentioned Forza, but what are some other ones you like to drink and play?
Well, I don't really have any that I like to do because I kind of said, you got to kind of stay to the concepts of something a little simpler.
Yeah,
now, I do like ones that have good music. Now, see, I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to play it because it kind of depends where I'm at. It depends how much I got to pay attention, how much I got to take in of the story. But anytime that I'm drinking, I do like one that has that good music. But I'm kind of going to piggyback off what you just said. Guitar Hero, man. I completely forgot about that. But after college, that's when Guitar Hero for us got really big. And you said, we had many nights going over to our friend's house because we had, I think we had every single one. And we had Rock Band. And we would just sit there. A lot of times we would go out at night. But before then, we would just sit there and play Rock Band nonstop. And it was just a blast. But, I mean, other than that, like I said, you kind of I stick to the simpler games. Maybe some with good music. Maybe some I've played before. And when I hit that certain point, I'm just done.
It's time to go to bed.
Yep. Like I said, but I don't really have to worry about that much anymore because I can't even remember the last time I was drunk because, like I said, these kids the next day, no thanks, man.
My problem I keep running into is I keep getting drunk and buying new games. And this is not a good exercise. Literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, I accidentally got drunk. And there have been 2 games sitting on my damn Amazon.
I love how you say I accidentally got drunk.
Hey,
now you're full of shit right there.
Hey, sometimes you forget that the whiskey you're drinking is 120 proof instead of 80 proof. And next thing you know, you're feeling it a little bit. I'm guilty of that. But I had 2 games sitting on my damn Amazon wish list waiting for them to go on special because you know me, I'm a cheapskate.
Yep.
But of course, they're Nintendo Switch games, so they never go on sale. So my drunk ass was looking at my list. I'm like, fuck it. I don't care. I'm buying them. And it was Dragon Quest 11 and Astral Chain, I think were the 2 games for the Switch. I still haven't played them. I ordered them 3 weeks ago. I haven't fired up either one. But I was determined to get those damn things off my Amazon wish list.
You were cleaning up the clutter, man. That's what you were doing. You were having a couple of drinks. You got a little motivated. You want to get some of that clutter gone. And you know what, man? I had the same issue. I have bought so many games drunk. You get that courage in you, man. You're like, you know what? I can do this. Now,
the digital download age has not helped that.
It's been terrible. And you wake up the next morning, you're like, I don't know if that was the best decision, but hey, that's drinking. Part of drinking is is buying games when you're drunk. And
I say part of our drinking is making decisions that we regret the next day.
And the problem is I don't even need that many beers to do that nowadays. I'm like, I've kind of been back and forth on this game. Give me 2 or 3 beers. I'm like, you know what? Why not? Let's just go ahead and pull the trigger on it. But you know what, Red? I think it's getting to that time where we got to wrap up now. So do you want to kind of go ahead and start us off on the wrap up?
Yep. Obviously, all the links to our channels are down in the description. You can find us on, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. We're out there. We're on our YouTube as well. Be sure if you want to support us on Patreon or PayPal, or even if you don't want to support us financially, we totally get that. But give us a listen, give us a 5-star review, even if you hate us. We do appreciate it. Give us a good rating. And if you want to swing by our websites, we have TGPZ Gaming and we have 2 Guys Playing Zelda, are both good sites for gaming and Zelda-related merchandise. We may earn a commission on any sales through there, but how about you tell us about where some of our social media is, Hick?
Oh, we're on all social media. You can find us anywhere. Just search us Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. On Facebook, we do have 2 groups now. We have Zelda Realm and Gaming Realm. So, Red, why don't you get on that one and join that one?
Yeah, I need to. I'm barely on Facebook anymore. I just keep getting on there and seeing 30 notifications. I'm like, what the hell happened?
That's Facebook for you. But no, we do have those Facebook groups. Once again, Zelda Realm and Gaming Realm. So check those out. Join those. They're exactly what they sound like. We're just going to talk gaming or Zelda and just have a good time. Red already kind of talked about our YouTube channels. We have YouTube channels for both, and then we also have our Discord channel, or server is what the name is actually.
Yeah.
It's called Two Guys Playing Zelda. We talk Zelda, but we also talk a lot of gaming. But anyways, this wraps up episode 6. We'll see y'all next week.